Hey, and welcome to the second episode of this podcast. Today I'm going to talk about asexuality, masturbation, and about having a relationship with a non-asexual person. Wikipedia says, asexuality is the lack of sexual attraction to others or low or absent interest in or desire for sexual activity. I would explain it as follows. Asexuality is when you feel little or no sexual attraction to other people. Consequently, many asexuals have no need for sex. But the asexual spectrum is very wide, and I always emphasize that. There are many different types of asexuality. Not everyone feels the same. Some are completely averse to sex. Others are neutral or even sex positive. There are also those who can only feel sexually attracted to someone if they know the person really well and have a strong bond with them. Asexuality should also not be confused with a lack of libido. Some asexuals have it more, others less. There are those who masturbate, there are those who watch porn, there are those who don't, and there are many other people. The word asexual is often abbreviated with ACE. I deliberately don't throw many subordinate terms at you. There would be even more precise terms for the different asexuality identities, so if you are interested, please feel free to do some more research. Personally, I think the most important thing is that people simply understand what asexuality means and that it is a wide spectrum containing many different identities. I explain this every time I tell someone about my asexuality. It's also important that people realize that this has nothing to do with abstinence or psychological problems. And in general, as with other sexualities that deviate from the social norm, you don't become, you just are. You don't decide to do it like, yes, I'm gay now, or yes, I'm asexual now. You have usually always been, just didn't always know it. And that leads us to the story of how I realized I was asexual. I really realized it in June 2019. 1 year before, I had already come across the term for the first time. At that time, I didn't read the Wikipedia definition, but learned much more that for some asexuals, things like cuddling, kissing, and caressing are much more important than sexual activities. At that time I thought that this might apply to me, but I also thought that maybe I didn't have enough experience to be able to say that. And spoiler, no, you can always know what sexuality or gender identity you have, no matter how much experience you have or how old you are. But that was not clear to me at that time, and so I suppressed it. Later, I had a boyfriend and we had more sexual experiences together. I thought it was okay then. It wasn't bad or anything, but I didn't like it either. I didn't feel the need to do it from the beginning, and something about it just bothered me, even though I even came to orgasm. After that, I didn't want to repeat anything sexual anymore, and I noticed that I was a bit distant from my boyfriend from that moment on. The relationship lasted only 3 months. When I came across the term asexuality again in June 2019, I dealt with it much more intensively and informed myself more precisely and realized that it really applies to me. In the beginning, I defined myself as grey ace or grey sexual. If you imagine a line, on the one side is sexuality and on the other side is asexuality, then grey ace would be in the middle. So of course simply imagined metaphorically. But since it isn't a line but a spectrum, and I noticed that I didn't feel 100% comfortable with the term, I simply called myself asexual, and I still do. As long as I know what I want and I feel comfortable with, I don't need more. But of course I can understand all those who feel better if they define themselves much more precisely. Do what makes you happy. While we are on the subject of identification, I will also tell you that every time I introduce myself as asexual, I also say that I'm panromantic. Unfortunately, many people think that asexuality also means aromanticism, but this isn't true. Aromanticism is the absence of romantic attraction. It is very important to me that people understand that I'm asexual, but that I have a very strong desire for a romantic relationship. Of course, there are asexuals who are also aromantic, but nobody should automatically assume that the same for every asexual. I think about this subject of outing and my romantic orientation I'll talk about in another episode if that is desired. To explain asexuality in another way, I will now quote a metaphor I found on Instagram which I really like. Alright, so, coffee. I don't drink coffee. I have no desire to drink coffee. I find people who enthusiastically go on about the flavor differences of lattes, espressos and French press brews both amusing and mildly baffling. All the coffee ads, coffee jokes, bustling coffee shops, to me all coffee is similarly bitter and unpleasant. I have been through so many, try this, it's sweet, you can't even taste the coffee, alias, I always can. And I'm sensitive to caffeine anyway, so I don't really think about drinking it when I wake up or I am tired. Yet I love the smell of coffee. I love the idea of coffee, the feeling of a warm cup taking the chill from my fingers, the cozy ritual of having a drink and chat. I might try someone's coffee. I think if they ask if I want to please them and share in something they enjoy. I'm also perfectly capable of learning the preferences of those I care about and creating a cup for their pleasure. And I like to repeat it again, not all asexuals think and feel the same. We are all very individual and have different needs and desires which are either present or not. I also found another post that explains very well what it's like to be asexual. I quote, "Never ever assume asexuals have it easy. Asexuality is growing up under the assumption you are a late bloomer and then the assumption you are broken. Asexuality is learning the word and still being afraid to define yourself as asexual because how can you say you don't feel something you don't even understand? Asexuality is coming out to people and having them laugh and tell you when you find the one. Asexuality is trying to enter spaces that promise acceptance and being told, but you're straight. Asexuality is trying to enter a relationship, worried that if you tell them they won't give you a chance and worried if you don't, you're just leading them on. Asexuality is living in a culture that finds sex so vital, half the world revolves around it and never understanding. Asexuality is being told you have it easy, so often you doubt any of your problems are real. So no, it's not easy. Especially people who have hardly known asexuality so far often ask themselves how a relationship should work. Some even claim that it takes sex to make a relationship work, but that is simply not true. So sure, especially in ace relationships where the people involved are asexual, it will work very well. But even in relationships where one person is asexual and the other is not, it is possible to form a strong, long-lasting bond. How does this work? With communication. Communication is extremely important, and not only on this topic. Communication is always very important. Those involved have to talk to each other about who feels how and what needs they have. Maybe compromises are made. Some asexuals have sex from time to time, especially if they are not sex repulsive and maybe do it for their partner. Personally, I haven't had a relationship since I knew I was asexual. I almost had one. So we talked about my asexuality early on and I was lucky because the person was extremely understanding, and also for religious reasons she didn't want to have sex at the moment anyway. She also said that she had never had sex before and therefore she couldn't miss it. We really talked about it intensively, and I advise each of you to do the same. Of course, I've met some new people since I know about my asexuality, and I was positively surprised how many of them reacted so well, and many of them also think that sex is not the most important thing for them and that they could be in a relationship with an asexual person. I was also asked if I could talk about relationships with non-asexual people, but at the moment I can't say much more than I just mentioned. But maybe if all goes well, that will change in the next few months. If I can, I will return to this topic. So, I'm really happy to know that I'm asexual, and I'm also proud of it. Since I know it, I can also deal with intimate topics much more openly. Since I was also asked to talk about masturbation, I will do so now. I have already said that there are some asexuals who do it, some rarely, others regularly. I'm one of those who do it regularly. Yes, I satisfy myself, but I have no desire at all to do it with other people. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do it, but not everybody talks about it. But it's also perfectly okay not to masturbate. People used to say that it was the devil's work, and I'm glad that people have gotten away from that belief. Because masturbation can be a very good thing. It reduces stress and you can get to know yourself and your body better. If you know what you like, you can have better intimate experiences with others if you have the desire to do so. It's also important to know that it doesn't always work out right away. It's best to approach slowly. Caress your body, explore yourself, and then you will notice what you like. Above all, you shouldn't only think about the goal of the orgasm, but you should also enjoy the way there. And only do what you really like, no matter what others do and like. Don't let yourself be pushed by anything or anyone. Pleasure is something great and very intimate, which you alone decide about. Just as you should decide everything yourself, because it's your body and it's your life. And with that I end this second episode. Do whatever makes you happy, because you only live once.